All right, it is 7 p.m. and I call the meeting of the Hastings Planning Commission to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the January 26th meeting. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Comments? All right, we'll consider those approved. The next item is public hearings. There are no public hearings scheduled for tonight, so we will move on to other actions. And the first item is the concept plan review for Pleasant Valley Farms, and we'll turn that over to city staff.
Thank you. I think I had this up here a moment ago. There we go. Well, folks, tonight we have a concept review of a new development coming forward. The concept plan review itself is not a formal process that we have. There's no application that comes forward. But in larger, more complex projects, we often find it a good idea to have a time in which the developer can present the plan to the commission, get some preliminary comments or direction from them. Things having to do with some of the major design, information you might want to see, things you like, things you don't like, that type of thing. The review that we have of the purview is within the land use code, and I'll go through that in just a moment here. But let's go introduce the project a little bit. What we're looking at here is this piece of property, which is about 160 acres altogether, owned by the Conzemius family. What we're looking at here is land that's between Featherstone Road or 140th Street, just north of General Sieben Drive, and going up to County Road 42 at this point near Lock Boulevard. So it's mainly agricultural at present. You can see from the woodland areas here, there are some wooded areas on the property, primarily around a escarpment that's about 50-foot difference. You've got about 50 or more feet that's higher in elevation towards the southern end of the site and a little bit lower towards the northern end of the site. And so that is the proposed piece of property that we have coming forward tonight. What they're proposing is about 375 housing units altogether. And I know this is very difficult to read. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit more on this. So going south to north, there'd be 375 units altogether. There would be an extension of General Sieben Drive, which would be from its current terminus here at Featherstone Road, just west of the cemetery, all the way through the site as a collector road, coming out someplace at County Road 42. We've been in discussions with Dakota County relating to Lock Boulevard and being able to have the exit for Lock Boulevard and General Sieben Drive coincide with one another with the County Road 42 reconstruction. So most of what you're looking at here is single-family homes going throughout the site, going east and west of General Sieben Drive. You can see this green area where there's not development is that hillside area, and then you've got more single-family development down on the lower portion of it, and then some townhome development more towards here, east of General Sieben Drive, south of County Road 42. What you're showing over here is an area that's not included as part of the development at this point, but may be included at some point in the future. This is the Conzemius trucking property, Leo Conzemius property. There has not been an agreement to acquire this property, but there could be in the future. What's being shown here is a conceptual way of how that property could be developed if it were to come in the future. When you take a look at what's around the property right now, the city of Hastings abuts it on the east and south ends. Generally, when you look to the east here, you have what we generally call the President's Edition, which is Pleasant Valley. There is a couple of road stubs that were designed in the 1990s to go west into the development, one over here and one down here. And so looking at that connectivity as we go back and forth there. When you look to the south of it, there's a couple of rural houses down here, the cemetery to the south, another rural residential property at this point, and then most of the other areas are agricultural as you go through this. Now, I put a little bit in there about Tradition Development. I'll have Todd Stutz from Tradition Development tell you a little bit more about his company when he comes up after my presentation here. One of the things that we will be considering is park dedication. A park of about 20-some acres is being proposed generally in this area here. You can see the trails that would go through it. Our Park and Recreation Commission will be reviewing whether they would accept the park or what the method of park dedication would be coming up at this Wednesday's meeting. So that's something that we're actively looking at right now. Now, with development of a property like this, it has a number of different steps which I've outlined in the report, none of which have officially started yet. The land itself is under contract with Tradition Homes, so they do have a purchase agreement on it, subject to certain conditions. Many of those conditions relate to the land use entitlements that would be necessary. One of the items would be annexation. When you take a look at the property here, and I'm going to go back to the other map, maybe I'll go back to this map. There we go. This whole property here lies outside the city of Hastings at present. It's within Nininger Township. So the process of extending our corporate limits into the township to develop property is a term called annexation. There's different ways in which annexation can be accommodated. We're exploring a couple of different options right now. We have been in communication with the Nininger Town Board. They are aware of this project and looking at how annexation would happen here in the future. So that would be one step that we would have. Another would be what's termed an environmental assessment worksheet. Because of the number of units that would be developed in the subdivision, it triggers a mandatory environmental assessment worksheet, EAW review. What an EAW does is it takes a look at the development impacts of a variety of different environmental and development items on this. Of one thing that I think is of important to a lot of people, they'd be doing a traffic analysis on this as part of that. There'd be a public process, so the city council would order the report to be released. There'd be a review comment period for people to comment on that, either from the public or from different agencies, and then they would make a final finding on that. That's one step they'd need to do. One of the items that we have talked about with the developers in neighborhood meeting, similar to tonight where there's no formal approval asked by the Planning Commission, we want to be able to introduce the plan itself to the neighbors to get comments on there. And that would be done during the neighborhood meeting itself. We anticipate that happening when the EAW is complete, so we have some more factual information to present to hold that neighborhood meeting. And then we get kind of into the nuts and bolts of land use that the Planning Commission is involved in. One dealing with a comprehensive plan amendment. Our comprehensive plan at present does include this area within our future urban service area, which means we have contemplated within the next 20 years that utility extensions would be brought into this area of the township. So it is within the plan we're doing. However, when we implement that and we establish land uses, there is an amendment that's necessary that Metropolitan Council would review. There's the rezoning of the property. Anytime a property comes into the city through annexation, it's automatically zoned agricultural. Agricultural would not work with the subdivision. We'd be looking at a different zoning designation. So that would come forward. And then the preliminary and final plat. So as we look at these plans here, these would be more formalized, into a preliminary and final plat. Again, with the preliminary plat, we're looking really at development of the entire subdivision. Want to have a good idea of how grading works, how streets work, how connectivity works. And then the final plat itself would be probably a portion of this. So they would plan to have different portions come in at different periods of time. And so that would be another thing coming forward. So these different items that we have for land use may come forward as one item combined with a lot of other actions, may come individually, but would be coming forward, we anticipate, later on this year. And we've also had our Development Review Committee of Council take a look at, or Development Review Committee of Staff take a look at this as well. This is our city planner, our building official, fire marshal, public works director, to take a look at the development and discuss certain aspects with the developer himself. And so we did include in there our review letter as far as some highlights of things. I mean, we were looking at the development. Overall, we think the development and the layout looks good. There's some things that we're looking to have different or make sure there's attention to. Double frontage lots here along Featherstone Road being one of them. looking at a potential trail connection up the slope to connect some of these areas in the neighborhood, working on the General Sieben Drive Lock Boulevard intersection, the future tree preservation plan, some of the ghost platting of the subdivision, and some of the connectivity that we'd have with some of these other roads. Those were some of the items that we had here tonight. So what I'd like to do at this point is to leave it open here for Todd Stutz of Tradition Development to come up, tell you a little bit about his company, and then Todd and I would be available for any questions you might have. And again, we're not looking for any formal action on this tonight, but are interested in your comments and suggestions for the plat as it comes forward in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. I'm Todd Stutz. I'm Vice President of Development for Tradition Development Corp. Also here with me this evening is Sam Mennebeck, who's also with Tradition Development Corp. Although this is the first time we've had an opportunity to appear before you, we've been in the process of in a conversation with the Tradition, the Kazimis Family Limited Partnership for over a year now. We actually put the property under purchase agreement, as John mentioned, in December. And so now we're seriously going forward. We've had an opportunity to meet with your development committee, also with your staff, to go through our proposed plans. Our plans, as John indicated, really were informed by a number of features. The necessity to extend General Sieben Drive through the property to Lock Boulevard, the existing wooded steep slopes that exist and our interest in preserving those, which is about 40% of the site. And then also being respectful of the existing land uses that we have to our east, in addition to the north and to the south, which I think we've addressed that. In addition to that, taking in consideration also where the existing utilities are in terms of extension. And so our sanitary sewer service would come largely from Hamilton, which is basically sort of in the midpoint of the site along the eastern property line. And so that was already planned for in terms of extension of sanitary sewer. And then, we're looking forward to have an opportunity to engage with the Parks Commission to talk about parks. And, at this point, we basically have two areas, one which is about 24 acres, which is to the west of General Sieben Boulevard, and to the east is roughly 16 acres, roughly, so that's where the 40 acres is. And how much of that 24 acres on the west side would be appropriate for a neighborhood park. There is a neighborhood park identified within the comprehensive plan that sort of said there should be a park facility there to serve not only the neighborhood that we're creating, but with the expectation is eventually there'd be neighborhoods directly to our west. So number of factors in terms of where this plan came from. I've provided some examples of what we're involved in. Tradition Development Corp really falls under an umbrella of the Tradition Companies. And Tradition Companies has been involved in the United Hero League's facility, so it's the Tradition United Hero League's facility down the street here. So even though this is our first development within the city, we have been involved in the city in other forms. And so we're looking forward to, advancing this plan. As John mentioned, this is a process that we're going to go through. First time here, but we expect this is going to take another 9 months before we get through the whole process. So hopefully you'll see our friendly faces in the not too distant future as we work through the process. That includes the environmental assessment worksheet, which we'll have to do for the site. And so we're interested in that going forward. But Tradition Development Corp is involved in not only home building, development, which we're here for, but also finance. And there's a little chart in there that shows all the different organizations that we have that fall underneath the Tradition Companies umbrella. So that's pretty straightforward. The closest development example that we have that's actually up would be Spirit of Brandon Farms, which is located in Lakeville, and between 160th and 170th, just to the east of Pilot Knob. In addition to that, Cobblestone Lake, which is actually in Apple Valley, which is just north of Spirit of Brandon Farms, which is north of 160th. And so those are two really good development examples. We would call those traditional neighborhoods. For the most part, they have reduced right-of-ways. They have boulevards in the trees in the boulevard. They have parkways. They have a certain architectural standard that we will require on this development. that are more traditional in nature in terms of front porches, reduced setbacks, exterior building materials will be higher quality than you would normally see. And there's, again, some examples and some pictures of different product offerings or home offerings that we would suggest here. For the most part, what we're suggesting is single-family homes. But in addition to that, within those single-family homes, there are some, we'll say, empty nester retiree targeted product in the form of a villa, so single level. And then also there's a small number, well, roughly 65 townhomes, which is single level, so again, empty nester retiree targeted. But the rest of it would be generally, we call it considered to be family housing of the total 375 homes. Got into a little bit of trouble at one of the meetings in terms of price point. So maybe we'll talk about prices, but we would expect homes to range from roughly $400,000 up to about $1 million in this site. I mean, some of the long-range views that are accomplished, what we'll call the hill neighborhood, which is above the hill, above, and then the valley neighborhood, but the long-range views that we have in the Mississippi River Valley are unbelievable. And the preservation of that existing bluff line and the trees that are there is really important. There will be a homeowners association amenity, which will be a clubhouse. Again, there's some pictures in there with the information you have. That we'll have a pool that will serve the neighborhood. In addition to that, the conversations that we had, obviously, with the Gonzemas family is regarding the farming legacy that's on the property. That's where Pleasant Valley Farm comes from. There's a picture of the barn that used to be on the site. In addition to that, there will be some legacy monument that will be part of the development that will take into consideration so people recognize that this had a prior use before that we developed the site. Walking down your hallway, obviously history is very important in Hastings, as it is in most cities, but definitely here. And so that's something that we're respectful of. If you come down to Spirit of Brandon Farms in Lakeville, you also will see that we are very respectful to the past history that occurred there in terms of monuments and recognition. So I can go through my full presentation, but does anyone, I don't know.
Thank you, Todd
Okay.
and John, both for explaining the project so far. The purpose, as John said, for this part of the meeting is for us to ask questions, give feedback. So I just kind of want to open it up to our commissioners. If anyone has a question that they would like to ask or considerations. And for those who are here from the public, please note that there will be multiple points for you to engage. It's just tonight is not that, but we're glad that you're here to learn about the project just as we're learning about it. With that said, commissioners, does anyone have a question? Commissioner McGrath?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to clarify. The anticipated single-family home is the 309, and then the 66 attached units are the townhome or multi-dwelling units?
Yeah. Madam Chair, Commissioner McGrath, that is correct.
Thank you.
That's the correct breakdown. We do think that there is a significant empty nester retiree market that exists within Hastings to be attractive to people that already live in Hastings. The mixing in some of the attached product, we thought unfortunately in today's world, that's some way to get to a price point that's more affordable than a detached home. And so that was one of what we're suggesting, at least, and again, open for input on that.
So is just the Gonzemas, John, this is probably more for you, the Gonzemas property being annexed, or is there any the other parcels in the adjoining, or that will be also part of that process that I'm not aware of, or that we're not aware of yet?
A good question, Commissioner. There are going to be two pieces of property that would be landlocked, would be surrounded by the city as part of this annexation. One of them was being one of the Gonzemas family members' home. What I believe they would be annexed in along with this application. The other one's the cemetery there, which is a little bit different situation. So we're researching how that might happen and if that needs to happen. But that is a possibility.
Okay.
Does anyone else have questions?
I had another comment.
Overall, I like the concept, but I think it was part of your suggestions too, is there a reason why you didn't put a connection to, I think it's Roosevelt, to the east there, that little stub. Because I just think there's a lot of housing and not enough access points for, in my opinion. I'm not a designer, but that was just one of the thoughts that came to my mind.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Mose, for sure, I mean, we've had a conversation with staff regarding that. There's no reason that cannot be extended.
Okay.
We actually have we have a plan that sort of shows that now.
Good.
So if we come back, the next time you'll see it, you'll see that connection made.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
Which one is Roosevelt? Can you clarify?
So on the top, there's
One
one.
to the north, yeah, you can use the
It's
mouse
gonna
there
be up
too,
here.
Todd, if you want to.
Yeah,
Yeah, hopefully this is useful, right? It's
Yeah,
right,
there you go,
right
right
there.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and so what we've basically done is we've extended this street down to here.
Oh,
And we
okay.
made a connection at this location. It's less identifiable as a through street in that regard, so people aren't gonna sort of bypass to use that to go through that neighborhood, but it is there for people that are, again, really very familiar with the area, including the residents, the existing residents to the east.
I like that. Okay, great.
Commissioner McGrath?
Can you please talk about, number one, the comparative in size for the Lakeville location in terms of units? And then secondarily, how long the build-out lasted? How long did it take? Is it fully developed, fully occupied? Kind of just a high-level summary of how that went.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner McGrath, Spirit of Brandon Farms is roughly 1,500 housing units on roughly 500 acres. That development started in roughly 2005, and we're just completing the last homes there, so roughly 20 years. I will say that one of the things I've mentioned is that, we're not interested necessarily in the speed of getting through a development. We're interested in what the end product is, and it's a quality product. And so I would say that 20 years is a long time to go through a development, but we had a little bit of a recession in there also, and so you can't anticipate those. We are expecting this development to be phased, and it would be phased from the south to the north. And so we would start with roughly what we'll call the hill neighborhood, about half of the hill neighborhood, and then go down to the valley neighborhood and basically do that probably in halves also. But we expect our annual absorption rate to be roughly 50 homes. So 50 homes into 300, so from when we start to we end is probably 8 to 10 years as far as the length of the project. But again, we can't predict what's going to happen with the economy. But I would say 50 homes a year is sort of a reasonable expectation for us. The one thing that's important to note is that we really have, like in our first phase, we really have 4 different, we'll call home types. Everything from a 75-foot wide single-family lot to a 65-foot single-family lot to a villa product on a 55-foot wide lot, and then also we'll have a 50-foot wide lot single-family product. So there'll be 4 different home types, all with sort of targeted demographics. And so that will allow us to at least hopefully do 50 homes a year. But then also will provide some diversity in terms of architecture and buyers and such that will occur within the development.
I have a question and a comment. With all of the trees in that area, it looks like the trees are being preserved in the sample plans here. I think that would be a really important piece moving forward, is to keep as many mature trees as possible in that area. Additionally, you mentioned a park that would be 20 to 24 acres. And thinking about this area, having a park within walking distance and things would be great. Can you give me an idea, and John, this might be a question for you, 20 to 24 acres, is there what's a comparable park in Hastings that's about that size? Sorry to put you on the spot, but hopefully you know.
I'm trying to think of Northridge Park off of General Sieben Drive and Northridge Drive there. Wallen Park, yeah, that one. I mean, that one might be closer to 20 as the ball field's on it.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, does anyone else have questions? Commissioner Sweetie?
Kind of along the same lines as Melanie, honestly just trying to get a scope of the size of this, because I'm not fully comprehending on it. I see it on the map, but I'm also just trying to rectify that in my brain. Is there anything similar like unit size development wise that we've had in Hastings. Yeah, like, is there something kind of similar as far as we've seen this more in our town?
Yeah, I mean, what we recently were looking at as a conceptual plan with the Walden development on the southeast side of town. They'd come forward originally with like 450 units, more multi, but the plan that they're coming forward right now with has about 190. So this would be, a little bit larger than that, 375 versus 190. When we take a look at some other subdivisions, developments that are around town, to the Century South area along 36th Street, that's probably comparable from my recollection from 20, 25 years ago, that was in the 300 to 400 unit range on that one. That would be one that I could think of.
So in terms of land use, when this would be rezoned, would it be mostly rezoned then as low density or medium density?
Looking at the current zoning we have right now, it would either be what's termed an R2 or an R3. The R2 area is single and two-family homes primarily within the older part of town, but it is the same district that we used for Heritage Ridge because of the smaller villa home lots that are there. And then there's the R3 area, which is generally used as mixture between single-family townhome and perhaps apartment. That would fit the density of the townhomes up there. So it would probably be an R2 or an R3 under our current zoning.
And then, do you have a plan phase for the clubhouse and the common amenities?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Mose, that's a very good question. Maybe unlike other developers, that's one of the first things that we put in. So that's available to the residents from pretty much the day that they move in. And so, but yeah, it'd be roughly a clubhouse of roughly about 5,000 square feet in size, would have a small parking lot, but then also a pool. And everyone within the development, which would be a master homeowners association, would have membership in that facility. There also would be some sub-associations, for example, the Villa neighborhood, which is sort of on the, so in this area here is sort of the Villa neighborhood. Those would provide lawn care and snow removal, so that would be a sub-association. And the same thing would go with the townhomes. That would be a sub-association, but they would all be members in the master association. Okay.
And where, is that going to be part of the 24-acre park, or where would that be?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I just, right in this location right here.
It's down there. Okay.
Yeah, yep. Yeah. We figure the neighbors, especially the cemetery, wouldn't care about the pool and kids splashing and screaming.
That's
So,
great, thank you.
yeah.
I had this, almost the same question as John, but just with the park, like what phase would that be built?
So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Montgomery, we're still in the process of working through how the annexation would occur. And so if it's annexed right away, from the township into the city, it's something that really, if we dedicate the land, it would be really up to the city in terms of when they would, actually do the improvements. We're trying to create, a trail system that has a sort of a destination trail system, so it's connected through, and so some of the trails may be built, but then it really would be up to the city on what sort of other function or programming they would have in terms of play sets or whatever the case may be. Again, we want that amenity to be built sooner than later because it helps, quite honestly, with sales. People see it, they believe it. And so that, at the end of the day, since it would be a city park, it would be up to them. We hope to have a conversation, we would prefer that all 24 acres would become a park. Now, in all honesty, the lion's share of that is trees. And so, the actual area, there's sort of a flat area. If you look at the aerial I think you have, it's sort of in this location
You
here.
can kind of go to the next page too if you,
Yeah, I could, couldn't I?
maybe.
Maybe. Okay, how am I gonna do that?
Arrow button, try that one.
I know, I'm working on it.
Here,
Okay,
let me drive.
you can drive.
Let's go to the part.
Not a very good rider, though.
No, let's go to the part. There we go, now I got it.
Oh, well, yeah, I didn't
That's
know I
way
had
too
to do
much.
that.
Okay, so this kind of gives a better view there.
Yes.
All yours.
Thank you, John. So to answer your question, as you can see, this is a heavily wooded area here. That would be part of that 24 acres. And then there's an area in here that is not heavily wooded. Sort of, I'm just trying to circle it here a little bit. There also is a wetland right here that we have to sort of work around that we can't touch. But this is the area that, again, you can sort of see the connection that we're creating out to the street here that would come into this area, whether or not there'd be a small parking lot or something that this, the city would like to do for that park. But in this area here is probably where there would be any sort of, we'll say, active park elements. Probably not big enough for a soccer field or a play field, but definitely for more sort of other active type uses. And so, and again, if you look at this whole thing, we have trails on both sides of General Sieben. We have trails that are connecting throughout the development. There has been a request made by staff that there may be a connection that comes from sort of down in this area here that comes up the ravine up into this location. We've sort of indicated this, that we need to do additional topo work on that and then also complete our tree survey so we see what impacts that might have on existing trees. But we'll definitely sort of at least plan on hopefully figure out another connection that may happen so that there's more of an immediate connection into the development and obviously through the development then over to the park. Okay.
I have a couple of questions about the traffic study, specifically the scope of the traffic study. So when that's completed, will it look at the traffic from General Sieben that goes back onto Highway 55, or will it also include any traffic that might route to 42 and then back out to 55 and further down on that highway? And then will the traffic study take into consideration the phase development, or will it look at the impact on traffic with the entire development as completed, even though it might take 8 to 10 years?
Did you want
Want
to?
to answer that? I can answer. No,
1, 2, 3, not
I'm
it.
actually involved
No,
in
you
2
go ahead.
transportation studies right now. Okay, so one in Lakeville and one in Andover, completely different worlds from that perspective. But usually a full-blown traffic study would look at what the sort of the background information is, so what's existing today. So and we would identify intersections that they would measure, right? And then there would be sort of what we'll call the no-build alternative, which sort of says between now and, let's pick a date, 2050, what happens with the background growth in terms of traffic if we don't even build the development, right? So there might be improvements that are just required regardless, okay? And then obviously then layers in the development itself on like a stage, so maybe 2030, 2040, whatever dates we want to pick with staff, and it will look at in terms of how much traffic is generated. And the type of use, single family definitely probably generates more than an apartment on a per unit basis, but definitely would be phased in over time. And so there may be improvements, maybe they don't have to happen in 2030, but can happen in 2040. And so we'll look at that. But I'll look at obviously, this is a big intersection here at Featherstone and General Sieben, how that intersection might function. How many lanes do we need? Right now, if you come down this, is basically a left turn lane and a right turn lane, and that will obviously change probably to a straight and a left turn probably, or maybe it needs to be expanded so there's 2 turns and then a straight. And then how that then feeds into General Sieben and what width is that road in this location as on the new portion of what we're doing, and then how that's inbound and then also exiting, how that might look and how many lanes do you need, and then what sort of traffic control eventually might have to happen there. Is it a roundabout? Is it a signal? Any of the above, but probably functions for the first portion just being stop signs, but then maybe eventually there has to be something else that has to happen. And that's the same thing relative to, the intersection on Locke Boulevard or County Road 42 in this location here. There is a desire, and we've shifted it over based upon what the county's asked us to do, because right now this is sort of not a great place to have Locke coming out onto, or excuse me, whatever the name of that road is. This road coming out onto Locke on the curve here is something that the county really doesn't like. So one of the improvements they want is the opportunity to move that over so it's a better alignment, and the geometrics or whatever, the geometry of this makes more sense for them. And again, is there a traffic control of some sort on that at some point? Probably not. They probably don't want that, but again, that's what a traffic study would look at. It would also look at You know, to the extent that if we completed that Roosevelt intersection and we completed the one, obviously the one out on Hamilton, you know, how much traffic potentially would go that direction. And it would tell us about those types of things. But a lot of that's at the direction of staff and what they want to see us review. I'm just saying the phasing does impact it, but ultimately, there's sort of ultimate what you need in terms of traffic controls, numbers of lanes, those types of things.
Just to follow up, John, is that something like the results of the traffic control or the traffic study and the EAW, the environmental worksheet, would the planning commission see that, or would that be just the way the timing works out, something that would just be seen by the city council?
Commissioner, that would generally be seen by the city council only on that one. There'd be a public, what the city council would do is to establish the public hearing, public review process of that, which is generally, I think, 30 days or maybe 45 days. So we send it out to different entities, and other private citizens have the opportunity to comment on that. Once all the comments are received, we take that back to the city council, give them a recap of all the comments received, and then they make a declaration whether the environmental assessment worksheet is adequate or whether more study needs to be done. But as far as the traffic study as part of the EAW, there would be, I would imagine, a separate report within there that documents the traffic. And I think Todd had gone through a lot of the things that we would be looking at. We want to look at the full build-out. We want to look at the situation of if it didn't develop, what traffic would be, if it did develop fully, what traffic would be, and the impacts at different intersections, including those connection points going into the other interior neighborhoods.
Commissioner DePalma?
Hi. I'm wondering if you can help me wrap my brain around a lot on this diagram. Could you kind of point out exactly where the townhomes would be compared to the single family? And then I think you mentioned villas, so I have a better idea of what's going where. And then what kind of distance between the actual home? Like you say, you have a single family home. What is the distance between one to the other? So I can have an idea of what kind of space we're looking at.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to ask John here to help me again, but can you make it just so I can get it all on one page?
The other one or this one?
This one is fine. I think this one,
You trying to go higher or lower?
just bigger.
Bigger.
Or not bigger, smaller.
Smaller, all right. How's that? Something like that.
You did good, thank you.
There we go.
Is that, can you see it okay, everyone? Okay, so the townhome portion, which would be sort of our last phase, is in the northern portion of the site, which is right here, okay? And these buildings typically would be 3 to 4 unit buildings, okay, in this location. Again, they're proposed to be all single level. So again, empty nesters, retirees. There would be roughly 14 to 15 feet between homes. We're a strong believer in 14 to 15 feet between homes. That applies to also single family. We don't believe in 5 and 5, which some developers wanted. They do 10 foot between structures, but again, from a drainage perspective and growing grass and all that, 15 feet between structures is sort of our standard that we follow. So that's what you'll see when we come in. Usually we'll call it out as 7 and 7 as far as side yards are concerned. But usually we're at roughly 15 feet between structures. And that applies to pretty much everything, that would apply to everything, including the townhomes. But again, you got a 3 or 4 unit townhome and then 15 feet between that and the adjacent structure. Does that answer the question?
So just so I understand then, the villas, I understand where those are. And then directly, I'm looking at below on your map, is that the townhome section then?
So the only townhomes
Okay.
is this.
It's right there.
Right
Okay.
here. That's the
Gotcha.
only townhomes there are.
Okay, and then everything else is single family?
Everything else is single family.
Yep.
So these all are, for example, 75-foot wide lots. Up against, those are the higher price lots, the more premium type sites. There are some 75s internal to that, but also 65-foot wide lots, which 65-foot wide lots is something that's sort of become more prevalent in the market. Then as we go over here, these are generally 55-foot wide lots, and those 55 lots are villa type product. So again, single level, basically. These would have basements because we've got topography we're working with. And so generally that's in this location here. There are some 50-foot wide lots in this location here. And those generally are, again, a little bit narrower, a little more affordable. One thing we heard at one of the meetings that we were at is the affordability is they were concerned that we were all too high priced. So, I mean, these would be, relatively inexpensive, but inexpensive is probably $500,000 in today's world. So, yeah. And then townhomes would be roughly 400,000.
Yeah.
But we expect all these homes here to be, significantly higher than that along the bluff.
Yeah, so when we're looking at villa homes versus single-family homes, just another explanation of that. When we're looking at the villas of Pleasant, right on North Ridge and Pleasant, that's what a villa home subdivision would look like. It's single-family, smaller lots. And then over in Heritage Ridge off of General Sieben Drive in Fallbrook, we have a combination similar to this, where we have the villa lot homes with your traditional single-family lot homes.
So,
Commissioner Montgomery?
Madam?
Yeah, just,
Go
so the area that is not part of the development, the trucking company that
Yes.
you mentioned, would that be more townhomes? Have you guys thought about that phase if it does get developed, or would it be more villas, or what does that look like?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Montgomery, at this point, we do not control that property. It's not under purchase agreement. It was probably our mistake by showing that little call bulb in there. That's from an older rendition of this plan. That will just end up being blank as we would submit something versus a ghost plat. We will show a road that will access it, so we're not landlocking that parcel. It would really be up with the conversation with the property owner as well as with the city in terms of types of density that might happen on that site. It could be anything probably from single family to a townhome to something even higher density than that. We hope eventually to have some agreement on that, but we're at early stages here and we're sort of working through. In fact, we tried to do soil borings last week and that didn't work out very good because we just created a big mud pile. And so we're doing some of our due diligence yet at this point. But once we get through that, then we hope that we can come to some agreement on that, but that's not promised. And at this point, we really can't show anything on that property because we don't control it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McGrath?
You talked about some of the homes having a higher price point, around the $1 million range. And I was just curious, are those typically scattered within? Are they sort of segregated to their own $1 million home area, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, generally, those types of homes will be more focused on sort of the higher quality lots. There are some pictures that are within your package that you can sort of see that are plans that we either built as a home builder or that we would encourage one of these other builders to be within our development. For the most part, we focus on local builders, for most part semi-custom builders or custom builders. But I would say that if that higher price point definitely will occur, along sort of the wood area. And then there will be sort of a transition perhaps in price across the street. I can't really predict what that will be. I will say that we go from a 75-foot wide lot along the bluff to, in some cases, a 65-foot wide lot. So just by that nature, they're probably a little bit lower price point. But usually the home across the street will pull up the value.
Right.
If that's $1 million house and across the street, you're probably going to get higher value because, again, that's what they're looking at, right? And so we're very bullish in terms of what we think in terms of price point. We do know that we'll have to attract from perhaps for those, some of those homes outside of Hastings, which was a conversation we had in another meeting. But, again, our primary focus is the Hastings market and what we're doing. And then at the end of the day, the price will be the price, but we think that those homes, the long-range views, and you stand there and you look at how, it's just, I just think there's not a lot of lots like that that are currently available in the market, or the sub-market even. I mean, your options right now are Rosemont or Cottage Grove. So.
May I ask one more follow-up? If you had to, and just tell me if it's too early to know this answer, but if you had to say approximately blank percent would be in the $400,000 range, blank percent in the $750,000, and $1 million. Like, do you have any kind of an idea of how that breaks down?
I think you have to look at the sort of the difference, the mixture of product which is on that diagram.
Yeah.
You can make certain assumptions regarding that.
Okay.
The 75-foot wide lots are probably a little bit higher priced. The townhomes are probably in that 400 range.
Yeah.
And then everything in between will fill in.
Okay.
It's really hard to guess.
Yep, I
At
figured.
this point. I do think mortgage rates are coming down, which is a good thing, but they may go right back up eventually. So we look at it, again, this is a long-term project. This is something we're going to be involved in 8 to 10 years. Things will happen. But we think that with the mixture of product that we're offering, because it's not all one thing, that we're going to offer a lot of different architecture. It's not going to be one builder. It's going to be a variety of builders that are going to be in here. We think that that synergy will create momentum, and I think the development will be successful.
I just had the reason I asked is I'm curious with the villas at the end of Pleasant and Northridge. I remember when they were first selling those signs, you probably remember this too. The sign said, home starting at 550,000, and I live on that Northridge Drive, and so I'd go down, and then I noticed the sign changed. It said home starting at like 400,000. Like, I feel like they just had to keep kind of lowering it and shifting with the market. So I was just curious if that was, part of what you experienced maybe in Lakeville.
Yeah, we're hoping this is more like the price of lobster, where it keeps going up.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that happens. I mean, you sort of, but I do think that the Epcon development, I can't remember which roads that are on, but that's the one we use sort of as that development, which was 33 homes. That's what we're talking
Yep.
about. But I think some of those ended up being $700,000 in there.
Oh,
Some
wow.
of them were 800. I think there was one $800,000 price point, and so I don't have a lot of real great comps, honestly, because there hasn't been a lot of new development lately here. But we're, again, very bullish in terms of price points and product. I think the biggest thing for us is we're coming in with a variety of different products. Actually, there will be ultimately 6 different product offerings here, and those will hit different price points. Again, we'll be patient. We don't have to. I mean, I gave you an example of development that took us 20 years to get through. So I hope we're not here in 20 years, because I might be not be here in 20 years. But at the end of the day, we're interested in doing a high-quality development. We're committed to the city of Hastings. We hope that we do this, but then we hope that this is so successful, there is some opportunities maybe potentially to the west. At some point, that land may develop if the property owners have a desire to do that. But hopefully we get our foothold here and are able to stay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Swedien?
This is probably more of a question for John, but how is water and electricity? So I think there was a comment on sewer earlier of like, that's all set up, but I haven't heard much comment on like how electricity and water are getting brought here. I know that like, especially that west end of town can kind of be tricky with having 2 different sources of electricity to our town. How, like, do you imagine this being a large increase on the grid, and are we capable of increasing our capabilities in order to sustain all of these new units?
Sure, Commissioner. I could address the water and the sewer aspect of it. That's something I'm more familiar with. On the electricity side, since that's an outside agency that would provide that, I'm less informative on that. When we take a look at our comprehensive plan, we establish areas for service, and this is within the area of future water and sewer service. When we dig down deeper into those plans, we have different trunk sewer lines and sizes and analysis that's done to look at the capacity. We may have an overall capacity in the plant downtown to handle a bunch of things, but ultimately, do the pipes that are leading from this subdivision to there, are there any restrictions or constrictions within there? In this situation, when talking to the city engineers, we think this is what's being proposed here can be adequately handled within our existing system. Where in other areas of town, there are some areas that are more challenging, where the number of units are limited by that.
I have another question. Looking at the adjacent neighborhood and the houses that are on Jefferson Street, it looks like I think that it's the backyards that would be up against the new development. And based on the layout of the new development, it looks like for those homes, the backyard, it would be backyard to backyard. I'm just wondering, first of all, if that's correct, and then secondly, do you have a plan to put any sort of natural barrier there, like incorporating trees there? Because I think that'll be in that neighborhood, that will be where the biggest changes for the adjacent neighbors.
Madam Chair Peters, these lots do definitely back up to the other lots along this property line. There would be a connection, as we mentioned, in this location here someplace, the staff would like to see. But there isn't any reason why we couldn't move those over and have additional depth there to do some sort of a natural barrier. There isn't, other than the trees that exist on the existing houses there, there isn't a lot of natural barrier there to save. But there's no reason, we got two situated, we have a situation down here on Featherstone that we know that John mentioned, that we have to do some significant landscaping, but some significant landscaping along here is not something that we would be, object to. We would definitely look at doing that and adding some additional trees, whether it's a combination of deciduous trees and evergreens and some, some shrubs of some sort, to create that sort of separation. Because, yeah, it will be different for those homeowners along there, and we recognize that, so we will do our best in working with staff to figure out an appropriate transition. There probably is some area that we can move over some of these lots in here. We'll move them over and create a little more distance there, and so we will look at that. Appreciate that comment.
Commissioner Swedien?
So as I'm looking at the height map, I'm seeing what I think is existing heights of the land right now. How much do you envision those changing? And when we get closer to final approval, will we have more of a, here's what the land looks like now as far as, heights, and this is what we plan on it looking like, just to kind of get more of a concept of how those two things compare? It looks like it's pretty close, but there's also a 25-foot gap on your hill property, or a 25-foot drop essentially on that hill property that seems like it'll take some leveling, and I'm just honestly curious of how that'll look.
Should I answer that question? Madam Chair, Commissioner Swedien, there is, we're sort of locked into the tree line here in terms of where that elevation is at. So that's a fixed point. Now, there probably will be some terracing that'll happen as we go from the south to the north. So there may be this may be at a different elevation than what this is at, and there'll be some transitions that'll happen, because ultimately we have to end up at this elevation and to preserve those trees. And the same thing happens down below, right? Is that we want to preserve this tree line that's along here, and so we sort of locked into the backs of that as well. As an example, these homes down here probably will be just full basement houses because you can't get enough to be able to get a sort of lookout or a walkout situation. There is in some of these locations about a 50-foot difference in elevation. And so that will be taken into consideration. But I do think I'm not as concerned about this. The one thing that we need to really work through is in terms of where is the best location for this collector road to sort of make its way down that hillside. I think we've picked a good location to do that has the least amount of impact on trees, but that's something that we'll have to obviously go through in terms of engineering. Some of these areas where we're impacting trees, it's actually a little bit flatter area than what the trees are sort of more on a flatter area from what we understand. But at the end of the day, we sort of have two fixed points that we really can't disturb, because otherwise we would disturb that whole tree, those steep slopes in that tree line. And then once we get down here, it's relatively flat. So, yeah.
Any other questions or discussion?
I guess I'm curious what brought you to Hastings, if I can ask.
Yeah, so maybe Gail wants to explain that. But so what happened is the Conzemus family went through a development that was done by Robert Engstrom Companies in Lake Elmo. And that development is something that they saw as being something that would be appropriate for the development of their property. It's a development called Wildflower. We were one of the main builders in there as a building company. And so Mr. Engstrom is like 92 or 94, I can't remember. And so he's not real interested in doing any new development. And so he's someone I've known for 40 years. I've done a lot of business with him in the past, and so he likes what we do, and so we were introduced to the Conzemus family. And as we looked at it, we had looked at other property within Hastings in the meantime, largely because we look at Rosemont and we look at Cottage Grove. We like your school system here. We like the amenities of the sites. We like your downtown. We like everything that's going on right here, right now. We think that even though there hasn't been a lot of development activity over the last few years, that we do think that this will be a very highly sought-after site in terms of some of the other. We've had opportunities to be in Newport and St. Paul Park and parts of Cottage Grove. And again, we look at this, and schools is a big player for us because we build a lot of homes for people that's important to them. And so nothing wrong with those other areas, but we think that this is a better site. So that's how we ended up here, is like, those were the options. And this seemed to be the best option for us. And again, the quality of the site, the location, everything about it we liked. So, yeah. Yes.
For us as a family, looking at somebody who would honor legacy, since there's been 5 generations on that property, and also look at the land and try to create that open space that would be at least a little reminiscent of what was there before was an important piece. So finding a developer that would honor those things was, we felt fortunate to find that. So there was 5 for between.
Thank you. Commissioner Montgomery?
Yeah, I just had a question if any of your other developments were comparable to this one in terms of the different price points and the different varieties of offerings. And is that, I don't know if could that be a deterrent to some of the higher end lots, or what are you seeing, or do you have any other success stories to share of when we're coming in with this many different offerings?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Montgomery. We would encourage you to, we can arrange something, to come over to Spirit of Brandon Farms in Lakeville. That's the closest by. It's very much what we would be doing here. And so, although we don't have the topography, and that property was a gravel mine, so there was no natural features there other than what we created for the most part. But in terms of product mix and what's proposed there, we can show you a lot of these pictures that we have here are from there. That's a perfect example because it's not just all high-end single-family homes. It's anything that ranges from a single-family detached, we'll call, home that's roughly $450,000, all the way up to $1.5 million, $1.8 million single-family homes, and they're all relatively in close proximity. It really comes down to the quality of development, the architecture. I mean, all these streets will have boulevard trees, will have sidewalks, they'll have, we're creating something that's maybe a little bit different. Maybe it's more reminiscent of the historic area of Hastings. And so, I would encourage you, if you haven't ever been through that development, to take a look at it. We're very proud of it. That's where our office is, as an example. We're in a horse barn. So, yeah, so, but again, there's all kinds of different products in there. Now, it took us 20 years to go through it, which, again, that's not where we're, but I do think you would like what you see there. Yeah.
All right, any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for fielding all of our questions for almost the past hour. We really appreciate it. And John, thank you for the staff preparation of the project report. If there's not other questions, then we'll move on to the next item. Thank you. This was really helpful. We appreciate it.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. We very much appreciate your time. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And then next we have trying to find the agenda, there you go. The Community Development Annual Report.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I think it's nice to be able to look at some of the items that we worked on in 2025, take a look at some of the impact of the developments that we've had there. It helps us in preparation for what may be coming ahead of us. We've got this development tonight, obviously, coming forward for approvals in 2026. So where have we been and what sort of things have we learned by? So a little bit of a recap on the Community Development Department. And I'll preface this by saying this report is goes through items that are beyond what the Planning Commission typically is involved in. It goes into every item that we're involved in the department, from city planning with the Planning Commission, economic development with HEDRA, our building inspection department, code enforcement, historic preservation, and the HPC Commission, and then now arts and culture, being involved in those. So as a department, we work on all aspects of development, and then we also work very closely with various commissions. So with the Planning Commission itself, some of the things that we were involved in last year, we did approve the central water treatment plant, which is under construction at 1290 North Frontage Road. This is where the former Carboni's Pizza Place used to be, and this is going to be for PFAS removal. As we look forward to 2026 and 2027, there are going to be 2 more of these type of facilities that will need to be constructed to meet our PFAS obligations. So in 2026, we're anticipating a similar plant to be built in the industrial park on property that we own there. And then in 2027, someplace we're looking around C's Church, working with them on property acquisition in that area. We also had an approval for a Chase Bank at Market Boulevard. This is within the parking lot of Cub Foods. Approval has been granted for that. We've had some conversations about building permit, and hopefully that'll come forward this year. We also worked on some planning with our growth area plan at Highway 55 in Jacob, taking a look at different land uses and how land could be developed more succinctly as we look into the future. We also had an approval for a permit for Pinecraft Boats on Spiral Boulevard. We did a lot of work on the cannabis ordinance and permitting, so we did have a lot of that come forward here today. With an update on that, we have the ability within our code to have 2 full-service cannabis operations within the city. One of them is operational right now. There is, I think, 6 special use permits out there for others, and it really comes down to the next person through the gate that gets their state licensing, state registration, can operate. And we have one that's getting pretty close to that, so hopefully that'll be done. And then one thing we started last year, and it's taking a little bit longer, but we're going to be bringing that forward to the Planning Commission, is our zoning code. As we discussed last year, the zoning code that we have right now is 30 years old. There's a number of things related to development, part of it shown tonight, where development trends, preferences, and housing subdivisions have changed over time. And we want to make sure that our code is reflective of that. So we'll be bringing back this spring and the summer various aspects of the code for review. It's a big project. We want to make sure that we're taking this in bite-sized chunks so we can have a good understanding and be able to review what is being proposed. We've also had a lot of projects under construction right now. We have an apartment rehabilitation at 321 6th Street, which is great to see. We approved that probably about 5 years ago. It took a little time to get off the ground, but great to get off the ground. Home constructions elsewhere, the 315 Pine Street building with the Thorwood that fire, that's coming along. I'm not sure when it's going to be open, but the fact that there's actually work that is coming to conclusion on that is something I didn't think I'd see. It's amazing. It's been a long time coming. Neighborhoods had a lot of patience in that, but it should be a great reconstruction afterwards. And then Vermilion Acres Senior Project, that is a project that has taken quite some time, longer than we thought. Not sure when that would open at this point, but it continually moves forward, albeit slowly. We look at residential permits for last year. We had 42 permits altogether for single-family construction and manufactured homes. That is just about the same we had last year, which was 43. From a commercial standpoint, we had slightly less number of new commercial and commercial industrial remodels, 51 from 81 the year before, and a little smaller building valuation in there. Different permits we've had around town. We had a slight reduction in the number of permits that we had for various types of remodeling and other types of building permits. and our code enforcement cases were up last year compared to 2024. Taking a look at some of the HEDRA activities, a few of the things that we've been involved in with HEDRA has been, we term our gateway project, Block 28, which is the block where Wells Fargo Bank is at 4th and Vermilion Street. We own 90% of the block now. We own everything on the block but for Spiral Pizza, and we are in continual conversation with them about being part of a project in the future. What we have done is we've done our initial phase 1 environmental assessment on that. We did get some grant funds for that, and that we're looking forward to in 2026 is getting a developer on board to develop that and determine a time frame for that. So more to come on that as we move forward this year. And then within the industrial park itself, we had gone companies or have gone companies under contract to market our 50-acre shovel-ready site. This is northeast corner of Spiral Boulevard and Enterprise. Their contract goes through July. There's been some discussion about different types of land uses that might be part of that in the future, primarily residential. We're not going to be making any changes on that during the course of their contract period, albeit we've been in a situation where we've been trying to market this land for a larger industrial site for 30 years, and it just doesn't seem to go anyplace. So we may have that larger discussion, but it would be something that we would be doing rather deliberately and not something just to sell property. We have a facade improvement program through HEDRA that provides a 2-to-1 match. We had $24,000 distributed last year on 7 projects, which generated another $103,000 in new development investment, which is great to see. This is one of the projects down here where Two Seeds Popcorn is on Vermilion Street. Music and Market we're involved in. We doubled the amount of times we were down there this year. Usually we had the music program that put on by Parks independently for a number of years, which is great. We've been attaching on to that every other session last year, the year before. In 2025 and forward, we're scheduling as joint events. During the summertime, we want to be in a position where people know things are going on in downtown Hastings on Thursday nights. And we have vendors there between 20 and 30 every time, food vendors, craft vendors, et cetera. So it's been a good project. We've had 6,500 individuals that attended during last year. We continue to offer entrepreneur assistance through Open to Business. This is for individuals that are either planning on starting a business or expanding a business, and they can ask people who have been there specific questions on what to do. We also are involved in business drop-ins and retention expansion visits. Our economic development coordinator in particular just drops into business just to see how things are going. We had 85 of those last year. And then we have more formalized business retention and expansion visits where we have a worksheet, tour, and some more in-depth discussion on businesses as well. So that's generally what we're involved in here this year. When we take a look at 2026, we've got this large project that will be coming forward. We've got the Walden development that might be coming forward as well, and other plats and developments. It seems like we had a bump in development, especially in apartments, about 3-4 years ago. And then last year and this year, from a permit standpoint, we're going to be getting a little bit lower on lots. But the lots coming in the pipeline this year and beyond could be even more than that. So we're in a good development shape right now, and I could stand for any questions.
So we talked a lot about development tonight, and we talked a lot about Cottage Grove and Rosemont, and you can't drive through Rosemont and Apple Valley and Cottage Grove for that matter without, like, it's like jaw-dropping how much development is going on. And I feel like, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I feel like Hastings is maybe a little bit behind that in terms of growth and development. Is that just the nature of being like a small farming community, or what do you think that's attributed to? Just a little bit slower rates of development, land not being available, interested in your thoughts on that.
A couple of different factors. One is there's this perception of Hastings being further out than it actually is. And that's always something we've contended with, that if you're part of the contiguous metropolitan area, you're in the metropolitan area. When you go through an area of farm fields for 5 minutes, you're in the country, even though comparatively speaking, from a commuting standpoint, we're comparable to many other communities that are around the Twin Cities. That's part of it. The other part of it's going to be land availability too. I mean, we've got some areas that are open at this point, but maybe there's other areas in other cities that are more open. But as you take a look at, I think what Todd had pointed out tonight with the tremendous growth in Rosemount and the growth in Cottage Grove, eventually the sites there are going to become more limited. And then the next place beyond that is us. And that'll be a challenge down the road. I mean, it does not necessarily mean that we take in all that development. We may not want to. But we can go through our comprehensive planning and our annexation to take in some.
Commissioner Moss?
Yeah, and on that same line is, and I'm sure that's part of it, is our infrastructure maybe can't accommodate the type of growth that they have right now as part of it. And also public safety expansions probably would be required. There's a lot of other things that I think need to be addressed as well before that type of a larger scale development could happen within the city limits, if I'm
Oh, absolutely.
correct.
I mean,
Yeah.
especially with single-family development, I mean, it requires a lot more services than other types of development do. And so you've got your schools, your roads, it's more spread out, so you've got more of a higher cost related to that. So a lot of things to consider if you have a stronger or more housing development than you anticipate.
Do you anticipate when the zoning code might come back to this group?
To this group, you know, I'm looking at probably April.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
I guess, so I know Meta bought a bunch of Rosemount land, and I know that, I think they had a contract with the Furlongs, and they want to expand into Hastings. Is that something that we're going to be a part of?
Interesting questions on that. We've been approached by various data center brokers on that. The amount of acreage that they're looking at exceeds what we've got available. I mean, within our corporate limit, I mean, they're looking at things between 300 and 600 acres. We just don't have that within our corporate limits. Even in areas that we've identified for future annexation, you'd need to get the buy-in from those property owners, and we'd have to take a look if that's something we would annex in, and is that something we would want. So they've had a few people kicking the tires at this point, but that's been the extent of it.
I want to compliment you and everyone else at the city. This was a great report. It was fascinating to read all of the details about not just the work that has been done with this commission, but also the other commissions. So really, job well done. And you're busy in the city. I mean, it's very busy. So thank you for the wonderful preparation of this. Any other comments or questions?
No, I would agree with that too. The reason why I asked my last question was because it felt like this was kind of more tailor-made development and how you took it with like the needs of the city of Hastings.
With like, you know, the different various, so, yeah, it was great. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Well, that's all I had on that one. As far as updates go, last city council meeting, we did have an action related to the Hastings Creamery, in that we declared the property a hazardous site, which is probably not a surprise to anyone at this point. But what that does do is it starts the clock going as to when they're compelled to demolish the site, which would be June 15th of this year. That June 15th estimate is based upon information that was given to us by the creamery. They said they could get it done by that point. During the meeting, they did have an attorney representing, saying that that was their intent. However, there may be things that come up that are unanticipated, and so they were wary about that. However, the council did take action to compel them to do it. So what happens if we get to June 15th and it's not completed at that point? We'll have to make that determination of whether we would take action to either finish the project and assess it back, or what we would do at that point. The important part is this: there's been an insurance settlement on the property. That was been the long delay on rehabilitation or demolition of that site for 2.5 years. And they have signed a contract with a demolition company that has some good experience to do the project. So I'm hopeful that this is going to come to an end. Ultimately, for that site, they would be looking to demolish it and looking to sell it for something else. So it would not be a creamery, it would be some other commercial development, residential development. When you take a look at the Highway 61 plan for reconstruction, there is going to be a stoplight at 18th Street, so that adds value to the property. So that was the big action we took there. When we look at Planning Commission activities coming up, our next meeting is going to be on March 2nd. I don't think we're going to have a meeting that night. There's a couple of things that are in the wings that I don't think are going to be ready. But that last meeting in March, I think we will be meeting. I've got a plat that may be coming forward for Greg Jablonski, and then some other actions on subdivisions. But so I'll let you guys know what's happening on the 2nd. Thanks. Okay.
You mean the second Monday in March? That's
That's right. I got council
Yeah,
screwed
not
up.
the second.
Yeah, the second, whatever that, the 9th, excuse
The
me.
9th.
We're a second Monday.
That's
Yeah.
right, yeah. The March 9th, I don't think we'll meet. I'll verify that with you before the meeting. But the 23rd, 1 month from today, I think we'll meet.
Sounds good. All right. Well, we do get to vote on one thing tonight. Does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
There is no, just so everyone knows, there is no candy.
I know, it's my fault. I'm leaving a note. So you made a motion to adjourn. Is
Motion to
there a
adjourn.
second? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by McGrath. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We are adjourned.